Andrew Wakefield wrote a study linking it. He claimed it was a suggestive study with only like 12 people in it. And he suggested that the MMR vaccine might be leading to autism. Well, because it was published in a really strong journal, I believe it was published in the Lancet, but this grew like wildfire. So the anti-vaccination community has more or less settled on this idea that something about the MMR vaccines or vaccines can lead to autism. And you really see the pseudoscientific reasoning because they will use a common tactic with pseudoscience, which is the anecdotal reasoning or handpicking evidence. So when you have, literally millions of people being vaccinated, and you unfortunately have a small percentage of the population that is going to end up on either having what I grew up knowing as autism or now the autism spectrum, you will have, no scientist will dispute this. You will have some people who were vaccinated, and then they ended up being diagnosed with autism. That's going to happen just based on coincidence, right? If I flip a coin every morning, sometimes it's going to be heads and it'll rain. That's not a surprise at all. But you'll watch the anti-vaccination community will focus very much only on the hits, the number of children who have been vaccinated and developed autism, and they'll have dramatic stories. So the most well-known case anecdote is probably Jenny McCarthy's son, who she promoted, said, look, she was just convinced that the vaccine is what led to her son's autism. Since that time, there's dispute about whether he actually has autism because there's another similar disorder apparently. But nevertheless, it's poor scientific reasoning, right? What do you do scientifically? You look at systematic evidence and you say, okay, well, let's look at the people who have been vaccinated versus the people that haven't been vaccinated. That's not always easy. Sometimes there are confounding variables, but nevertheless, you do this different ways in multiple studies, and you find the same thing over and over and over again. No evidence of any systematic relationship between being vaccinated and developing autism. So there's just no relationship. But it's hard to get people to understand that because what do they do? And this is a statistics issue. They'll say, but the next research study is going to show it. And that sounds innocent enough, but you say, look, how many do we need to do? Scientists are doing other things and you're scaring people into not vaccinating. What we do know is things like this, not being vaccinated against polio, and you get polio, you end up in an iron lung and you die. Like, that's bad. We know that not being vaccinated has severe consequences. So until you can deliver something that's legitimate, why wouldn't you vaccinate?
Well, when you were talking about facilitated communication, you have empathy for parents desperate to talk to their child who they've been caring for years, and they're desperate for a connection. But we could say the same about parents who have a child with autism. They're rather desperate to know, why is my child have this illness, and so it's reassuring. We can kind of understand why people do this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Something that challenging would, of course, as humans, you search for explanations, particularly when it's something deep and meaningful. Right. And it is, as being human, it is understandable. But at some point, when you make scientific claims in the public sphere, you have a responsibility to know what you're talking about, or else, the anti-vaccination community, it causes a lot of harm, and the people that really believe in it, they don't stop, and that's what gets me. But I would add to that there's so many pseudoscientific claims, and there is so much misinformation out there. I don't fault anybody for seeing something on the internet and getting worried. We just don't have time to look up every single claim. But for something as important as vaccinating your children, go listen to your pediatrician and don't listen to the person that posted on Facebook, and get to the bottom of these things.